What's up, guys? Today we're going to be looking at the first dev diary for Steel Division 2. This is the first dev diary to come out on November 15th, so today. It's the first actual news about the game that we've gotten, and it doesn't look bad. So let's dive right into it. Steel Division 2 is introducing dynamic strategic campaigns, single-player turn-based strategy game mode in which you can, if you wish, fight every battle in real time. It's more than just a new game mode. Their philosophy is to develop it as a new game within the game. As the general of your army, you're in charge of dozens of historically accurate battalions, hundreds of companies, thousands of men, and up to 150-kilometer wide maps. Thousands of men, hundreds of companies. That's a lot of units. During each turn, representing half a day, you'll have to manage their movements, their combat, and make sure the supply line is intact. In the first article, they give us details on how it's played. They give us a pre-alpha picture of the map, which the more I read this dev diary, the more it seems like the dynamic campaign from Wargame, especially Red Dragon. And all the images and videos are early development, and they are subject to change. So, obviously, they're going to make it historical. Operation Bagration, Bagration, was one of the most massive World War II operations that ultimately led to the war's end. It's when the Russian army launched a huge offensive against the Wehrmacht. They destroyed 17 divisions, German divisions, and this was just after Operation Overlord. Why is this important? Well, it's just one of the scenarios they offer you. And I'm assuming it's because it allows a somewhat even amount of force for the Russian and German side, whereas later on in the war, the Germans were severely depleted in supplies, morale, men, equipment, munitions, and the war was not in their favor. But this is one of the last times that the German army and the Russian army were somewhat even in terms of force and equipment. So, first point, massive time-consuming single-player campaign. Even if Steel Division 2 will have way more skirmish content than its predecessor on day 1, 10 more maps than Steel Division 1, 200 more units, new game modes, which they do not describe what the game modes are. One of them is the dynamic campaign. But, 10 more maps, 200 more units, and a new game mode. This is very different from the Steel Division 1 campaign, which was linear. It was really linear. It's kind of like the Company of Heroes campaigns, where you play a mission, and this mission is a certain battle that takes place in a larger battle. It's not like you were commanding the entire front. You were just commanding a brigade or a battalion or one army. You had to defend this town, and that was pretty much it. But this is a whole different thing. Reinforce and contextualize historical accuracy. Basically, this point is saying we're going to explain the phases. We're going to explain what the battles mean and why they're important in the grand scheme of the front and in the war and in the entire operation. It's not just fighting a battle to defend this town like Steel Division 1. C. Innovative strategic and tactical experience. We didn't want to simply reproduce a dynamic campaign as we did, for example, in Wargame Airland Battle, but to push the experience further and explore new exciting ways of playing. It was important for us that we were able to play not only one battalion against another, but to have the possibility of building your own assault force with multiple battalions. We also wanted to get rid of the cells on the map and allow complete freedom of movement. Now, what this essentially means is in Wargame Red Dragon, you had to fight with the armies you were given. You had to fight, I remember the Hong Kong one, you had like the crappy British Armored Brigade, which was like, it was essentially weasels with tow missiles and infantry, and you couldn't get any more equipment, which I guess it was historically accurate because the British couldn't send like, not leopards, challengers. They couldn't just send challengers to Hong Kong on day 1, you know? They had to use what they could. And getting rid of cells Well, they'll explain it in a minute as I read the article. So they selected massive 1-to-1 scale operations from Bagration. Key moments that offer the most interesting blah 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 blah. That's not really nothing important. A new game within the game. So this is when they fully explain everything. If the real-time tactics put you in the boots of a commander, blah blah blah. You have access to detailed information on every battalion, such as its combat values, assault, armored, support, and more importantly, the companies and the units within them. You can display the stat sheet of the units at any time with just one click. So it is a lot like the Wargame dynamic campaign, where you did have armies, but in this game you can customize the armies, or battalions, I mean. And as you can see here, we are looking at this army that is holding Bober, the town of Bober, and it is the 10th Guards Motorized Battalion, I guess. I don't know much about Russian army organization. And they have 210 infantry. Let's look at this information here. From what I can gather, they have 210 infantry units. There's no telling how many squads that is. Like Rifleman 90, I think, had 10 units in a squad. So I don't know how many actual units of infantry that is. That's 210 soldiers, but how many individual squads is that? We don't know. 31, I'm assuming anti-tank guns, judging from that little icon, but it kind of looks like an artillery, so I'm assuming it's also like anti-tank artillery, maybe mortars. 0 tanks, even though they have armored cars and 2 tanks right here, so I'm not sure why that says 0 when they have 9, 1, 10, so they got 10 tanks, 10 armored vehicles, so 20 vehicles in total. 17 trucks. I guess motorcycles count as trucks. I guess that means motorized in general. 1, 2, 7, 17. So that's 17, but the numbers just aren't adding up. 17, 18, 24, I think. I don't know. They have flak. I don't know why that is its own separate indicator. I guess it's important to distinguish in case you want to bring in anti-air. But it says they have 0 anti-air, which they don't have any anti-air. I also don't see any flak in here, so this doesn't really make much sense. Assault value of 53, but it says 121. The numbers aren't making sense. Not sure what that equates to. I'm sure there's an explanation, but they don't explain it in the article. Armored value of 10, support value of 5. I'm guessing that this means how many units of support they have, which means they got 5. Yeah, here we go. 5 support units. It's red. Red is support. 5 support units. Motorcycle mortars. 10 armored. Armored is green, so they have 10 armored, but they don't have tanks up here. That doesn't make any sense. And 121 units of assault. Okay. That's the total value, that bar. The bar is the total value. The value right here, I'm not sure if my mouse is showing up, but the value next to the bar is how many units they currently have, and I'm assuming that's their potential. Like this squad is 2 men, that has 1 man, that has 9 men, and I'm assuming if the squads were filled up, and if this battalion was reinforced, it would have 121 men in it, but right now it has 53. So that's what that means. And they also have an order list. They can fortify, they can ground deny, not sure what that means, or they can bombard. And I'm guessing bombardment is to attack whatever is within your artillery range. So they have mortars, so they would probably be able to attack just this tank division. Fortify obviously means fortify, take up positions in these buildings, take up defensive line right here blocking the road. Ground deny, I don't know if that's scorched earth, laying mines, blocking the road. I don't know what that means. It essentially sounds just like fortify. Like if you fortify right here, then you are denying ground. That's what fortification is, but maybe the next diary will explain. So what else do we have? Each battalion has a number of action points. that allows it to move. That's just like in Wargame. Allows it to move, assault a position, or execute an order. These points will recharge at night every 2 turns if the supply is intact. So every 2 turns at night, the action points recharge, a lot like Wargame, if the line of supply is intact. So if they're cut off, encircled, surrounded, they won't recharge their action points. I'm guessing that simulates fuel. Hopefully it's different for infantry-only battalions. But I guess you have to simulate food too, but I don't know, they can sleep, can't they? You can still sleep if you're surrounded. A battalion's movement capacity will depend on its type and will be affected by the nature of the terrain. You'll want to use roads as much as possible. We're providing all the decisional tools you need to make the proper order. So, in this GIF right here, you can see a tank battalion moves along the road and they move pretty fast. I'm guessing it takes a shorter amount of time. I don't think time is a factor if it's turn-based. I'm guessing that tanks can obviously travel further than infantry-only units. Like if this right here had no trucks and it was just infantry, they'd go like right there, because it has to simulate the amount of time it takes for them to walk. And that's what that means, is how far they can go in a single turn. And if you take a road, it's faster. And I'll explain the forest here in a second. Selecting an enemy battalion will display the battalions you'll be able to send to battle. It doesn't explain the forest? Okay, it explains it at the end. But basically, if you send your unit into a forest, it'll be slower, obviously. If you send it into a marsh or river, whatever that is, or hills, it'll be slower. Indication of the phase where it will be available. The combat phase will depend on its movement capacities, influenced by the distance and the nature of the ground. Some of them will be able to arrive in phase A, B, or C, representing different moments of the battle. Before starting the combat, you'll be able to select up to 6 battalions for a battle. So, I'm guessing that this means the further away that units are from the battle, the later phase they arrive in. But they could arrive earlier if they're fast enough. And as you can see here, in this GIF, this one is going to arrive in phase A because they initiate the battle. These 3 units, trucks and tanks, are going to arrive in phase B because they got to drive further. And phase B isn't that long. But these guys won't be able to make it to the battle at all because they have to turn around, come back down the road, or they got to go up this way, find a road that comes in, or cross the forest, but either way they won't make it in time, apparently. If you're a pure strategy player, you'll be able to auto-resolve the combat instead of fighting it, so it'll be a lot like a board game. After an animation showing the different battalions in action, you'll have access, phase by phase, to a detailed summary of the battle, so it'll essentially be 3 battles per battle, including the losses and out-of-combat units. Of course, the nature of the terrain will affect the outcome of the battle. For example, wooded areas will reduce tanks' efficiency. Only when you use the AI to auto-resolve the battle, though. That doesn't apply to manual commanding in-game. Another option is to fight in real time. Depending on the situation and the terrain, the tactical map in the game mode will be different, reflecting a realistic combat situation. Launching an assault on a defended position near a wooded area will result in an attack defense situation on a forest map, obviously. 3 different game modes and 25 maps will be available, allowing a wide array of situations. So if you attack in this town, you're going to fight in a town map. If you meet an enemy unit in the forest, you're going to fight in a forest map. Same with hills, or like empty road, or rivers, or whatever. And they'll tell us everything we want to know in a future article. There's so much to talk about, it wouldn't all fit here. Spoiler alert, it's different from the pure skirmish mode. Last but not least, as a general, you'll also have access to important information such as the current strategic situation on the general front and the order of battle. And the order of battle is what units are within a unit. So there's like it goes Army, Corps, Brigade, Battalion, smaller battalion. At least for the Russian army, apparently. I think it's the same for every army ever. That's just how armies work, but I might be wrong. And the order of battle just tells you what units you have and what unit they're a part of. And it's part of a larger game, and that just goes on to reiterate what they said before. There's still deck building, and it's a little better because there's 600 units, and it's a brand new deck building system. I remember they allowed some more tactical freedom as well as a brand new armory, and I think it's like you can customize. There's more customization. So available 2019. When does this come out? I don't know. I'll edit this in. But that's the dev diary. First one for Steel Division 2. This is Killer Keith, signing off.